My first letter today comes from Mrs. Orwell, who says, I am 32 years old, and when I recently visited my gynecologist, he informed me that I have polyps. He says that they should be surgically removed. I am absolutely terrified and haven't slept a wink. Could these be cancerous? Are they dangerous? I've never had any previous problems of this nature. Mrs. Orwell, let's deal with the most important issue first, and that is one of your peace of mind. It is absolutely dreadful and quite unnecessary that you had to go through this time of torment since you visited your gynecologist. Remember, your doctor is your friend. Never leave your doctor's consulting room before you are quite happy that he's explained adequately the cause for your problems and whether, for instance, in this case, the disease could be malignant or not. As far as the polyps themselves are concerned, polyps are outgrowths of usually normal tissue which grow out from the vagina or the mouth of the womb called the cervix. They can be on long stalks and can actually at times exit or be pushed through the cervix, as is shown in this picture over here. Most polyps are perfectly benign, they're harmless, but they can cause vaginal bleeding and they can cause vaginal discharges and therefore have to be removed surgically. I hope you now have the confidence and the courage to revisit your gynecologist and have them removed. Now here's a letter that deals with a very serious issue, malaria. Mrs. Mngubani tells me that she and her family are planning a trip to Zimbabwe quite soon, and she believes that she should take medication for malaria. You're quite correct. Let me explain. Malaria is an infectious disease, one of the most common infectious diseases in Africa, and it's caused by the bite of an infected mosquito transmitting the malaria parasite into the host, which in this case is the human being. Malaria, unfortunately, can be fatal, and it's very, very important that it should be diagnosed early if one has contracted the disease. Nevertheless, today we can take preventative measures, effective preventative measures, to prevent malaria being propagated. Prevention starts with preventing yourself from being bitten in the first place. And then also, most importantly, take anti-malarial medication before you leave. In most parts of southern Africa, it is important to understand that the malaria parasite is now resistant to chloroquine, and therefore, unfortunately, we have to take two different medications at the same time. First, chloroquine, or nivaquine, is the mainstay of treatment. But because of the chloroquine resistance, we have to add another pill called Paliodrine, and this has to be taken as well. Consult your doctor how to take them, because you need to carry on for at least 4 to 6 weeks after you return from the malaria area. Perhaps most importantly, when you come back from holiday, if you develop a fever, a headache, or flu-like symptoms within about 10 days after coming back, visit your doctor immediately. It's time for me to go once again. Please remember that if you'd like to write to me, address your letters to House Calls, P.O. Box 840, Randburg 2125. I've definitely caught spring fever. I'm going for a run and then a romantic dinner. Spring is here, the buds are on the trees, the country is starting to look green. It's a time of renewal, a time where we steel ourselves for the end of the year, for the rush, for the frenetic party hopping before Christmas time. It's also a time when many people can't cope with the emotionalism of Christmas, can't cope with all the things they have to do before they wind up for their holidays. It's a time of stress. and unfortunately a time of suicide. My first letter today comes from someone who definitely needs support and a lift at this time. Mrs. Vivian North writes that she's 48 years old and is going through the menopause. She writes, "I just don't feel myself anymore. After years of working hard in my husband's business, I'm now at home. My children are independent and leading their own lives. I feel unattractive and worthless." Does that ring a bell? "I have always looked after myself, and my husband tells me that I look wonderful for my years. I just don't feel as if it's true. I really am so depressed and just don't feel that I can cope." Mrs. North, it's sad that someone who's given so much to her family feels this way at this particular time of her life. Please believe me, many women at your age feel the same way. The causes are usually twofold. Firstly, the menopause itself results in a flux and a change in your hormone levels, and this can lead to this kind of depression. Secondly, as in your case, often at this time of your life, your lifestyle changes. Your children leave home. In your case, you left work and you don't work anymore, and the sense of worthlessness and helplessness and boredom will come into the picture. What I would suggest is the following, that you visit your doctor first and foremost, who will look at you, who will take a history, and he'll do one of two things. He will either advise you to start developing a new interest in life, perhaps a hobby, some social work, if you like, and perhaps even starting a small business. Alternatively, what he may do is put you onto medication, and this could be either hormone replacement therapy because of the menopause, or it could be some kind of antidepressant. Whatever you do, this is the time to do something for yourself. You've spent so much time in helping your family and your children, and this is really a time of opportunity. I wish you well, and I wish you, above all, a sense of worth and a sense of happiness. Before I leave you, be smart, be careful, be wise. I'd like to read you some wonderful words that Voltaire, the famous philosopher, wrote. "Each player must accept the cards life deals him or her. But once they are in hand, he or she alone must decide how to play the cards in order to win the game." Goodbye, till next time. Hi there, I'm Dr. Matt Haus, and for the last 25 years I've been privileged to be able to be part of the wonderful world of medicine, a world where science and technology interact and are very important. But the most important of all is you, the patient. You, your families, your loved ones, your friends, people who love, who lust, who live, and who long for comfort in time of need. One of the wonderful things about television is the fact that we can get to so many people and not only see one person at a time. And we're going to be dealing with many people's problems on this program in terms of letters written to us. Now, the first letter today comes from Mrs. Doreen Sikoti, and she writes, "Dear Doctor, I have recently had my second baby." Congratulations, Doreen. "I have another child aged 2, and I really don't want to fall pregnant again. My friends tell me that I can't get pregnant while I'm breastfeeding, but I'm not sure. Please advise me." Well, Doreen, you are right to be unsure. While it is true that breastfeeding does help to prevent future pregnancy by preventing the onset of normal ovulation and the normal menstrual cycle, it's not fail-safe. I would suggest you go and visit your local clinic and ask for the sister or the doctor in charge for alternate methods of contraception. Methods like the mini pill which we have here, or other methods of contraception like barrier contraception, which condoms are one example. Now here's an interesting one. It comes from a young man who is 14 years old and who wishes to remain anonymous. He writes that he has never kissed a girl before and wonders whether he will know what to do when the time comes. Kissing and more intimate physical contact has two purposes. The first and most important is that it's a biological function designed to ensure that God's earth will continue to be populated by animals, by human beings, by ourselves. And in that sense, what to do, how to do it, is something that we're born with. It's inborn. And we need not worry to learn those kind of things. Secondly, attraction for the opposite sex is meant to give pleasure. And in this sense, nature knows best. I can assure you, when the time comes, you will know what to do. Here's another interesting letter. Mr. Naidu writes, he's having difficulty in sleeping. He's getting headaches and is feeling constantly anxious. He wants to know whether he should take sleeping pills to solve his problem. Mr. Naidu, the answer to that is definitely not as a first resort. Sleeping pills are a form of tranquilizers, and at best, they help you to forget your problems, not to solve them. Also, one can become dependent on them, and it can depress you. Sleeping pills or tranquilizers can actually make you more depressed and more anxious in many cases. You will also need to take more and more of them as you go along because your body gets used to them. My advice to you is that you learn or try to solve some of the problems that are concerning you, whether they be at work, whether they be in the office or socially. Mr. Naidu, happy dreams. The last letter we have here today comes from Mrs. X of Santon. She tells me that things are not quite as they should be with her husband, and she's wondering if an affair is the answer. Mrs. X, your thoughts are definitely X-rated. And I blame the media for many of these kind of attitudes. An affair is never the answer to a problem marriage. From what you tell me in your letter, it seems that you need counseling. And there is an organization called FAMSA, the Family Association of South Africa, and I'll give you the telephone number, 011 9757 106, or you can write to them at P.O. Box 2800, Kempton Park. Please don't throw away a chance to save your marriage. Our families are our greatest heritage. And before I go, just a thought for you. Do not be afraid of conflict. And just listen to these wonderful words. If a man lives without inner struggle, if everything happens in him without opposition, he will remain such as he is. Goodbye till next time, and be happy.
25% of all of these people share a common disease. For many of them, it results in sleepless nights, postnasal drip, coughing, itching and sneezing. Some of them are taking costly medication to alleviate the symptoms. Others have not yet been diagnosed and continue to suffer as a result of continual reaction to the environment. They're suffering from allergic disease, one of the most common and debilitating diseases of the decade. allergic disease has grown to such alarming proportions internationally that campaigns have been launched to educate and inform. ALSA, the Allergy Society of South Africa, is an active non-profit organisation committed to ongoing education and research. At conferences like this one, ALSA brings together international medical experts to keep the local medical profession abreast of research and developments worldwide.
I will simply grow out of this.
It is part of an international initiative to provide information about allergic disease, not only to the general public, but also to medical practitioners.
There has been a concerted attempt by the societies throughout the world to educate doctors. There are national education campaigns in New Zealand, in Australia, in Canada, and now in South Africa. And in South Africa, the Allergy Society of South Africa is a vibrant, strong, and very powerful organization, and through its media and through its education campaigns is educating both doctors and patients.
Part of ALSA's commitment is to help the general public to understand the causes of allergic disease. Pollens and house dust mite are probably the two most common causes of allergy in many patients, and booklets like these are distributed free of charge on request. This creature is known as the house dust mite, and believe it or not, exists by the thousands in all of our homes. It is ever present in carpets, sheets and pillows, and thrives in humid conditions. Invisible to the naked eye, dust mite is about 1/3 of a millimeter in length, has 8 legs and thrives on the dead skin scales of human beings. It's estimated that there are roughly 10,000 house dust mites in the average bed. It is the excrement of the house dust mite which is responsible for a large percentage of the cases of allergic disease throughout the world. Pollens and grasses are another common trigger of allergic disease. Grass pollens are a much greater problem to allergy sufferers in South Africa, as they are present almost all the year round. One of the recommended treatments for house dust mite and pollen allergy is immunotherapy. After the doctor has completed a careful record of the patient's history, skin tests are carried out to determine his reaction to certain substances. The skin is marked and small amounts of testing solution or allergen are placed onto the skin. Each solution is a tiny amount of a specific allergen, for example dog fur or house dust mite. The skin is pricked, and within about 15 minutes it shows signs of allergic reaction by presenting as a raised wheal. The doctor is then able to assess which allergen should be avoided or treated. For patients who have a serious reaction to bee stings, immunotherapy is a simple solution to a life-threatening problem. Immunotherapy involves a series of injections of tiny increasing doses of allergen. The number of treatments varies from patient to patient. But while immunotherapy is an option for many, there are thousands of South Africans who remain undiagnosed. People have moved from the rural to urban environment, and with that move comes, in many cases, allergic disease. Why is allergic disease becoming so prevalent amongst people who previously had never suffered from it?
In the old days, in their traditional environments, they used to breastfeed almost by the rule, and now they come to the peri-urban areas, they look for jobs, the mothers look for jobs, the children are not breastfed, they are put almost straight away onto supplements and artificial feeding. Then there's the whole issue of smoking, cigarette smoking. In the traditional environment, it did not seem that the women used to smoke as much as they do when they come into the cities. Then there's a whole question of urban pollution, not only atmospheric pollution from an industry, but also motor cars. In the traditional environment, they used to burn wood, perhaps, and when they come to the urban environment, they often burn kerosene, oils, which give off again nitrogen dioxide, anthracite, and it's a priority to start electrifying the townships if we want to get rid of those kind of trigger factors.
Our living and working environments are hard to control, and allergic disease is not always seen as a serious issue. A bout of hay fever, itchy eyes or irritated skin are usually viewed as fairly irrelevant by non-sufferers, but it seems that the effects of allergic disease are definitely a serious socio-economic consideration.
Allergic disease really does affect productivity. We really didn't take much notice about it in the past because people were obsessed with perhaps asthma deaths. Now, asthma does cause mortality, but not to the extent where perhaps other diseases cause mortality. But now we're beginning to realize that particularly in children, particularly in young people, that the manifestations of allergy can be as diverse as perhaps irritability, sleeplessness, early morning awakening. The children don't perform that well at school. A lot of what we used to call minimal brain dysfunction we now know is due to allergy. And what happens is there are many, many school days that are missed by children. And in adults, if you look at asthma, if you look at hay fever, if you look at various other allergic diseases, again, many days lost off work. And the socioeconomic implications of the morbidity, which means the effect of the disease rather than the mortality, is huge. It's absolutely enormous. And we need to come to terms with that, because the solution of allergic disease is does not only lie in the medical field, but socio-economic factors, urban planning, political factors, all contribute or have to contribute to fighting this disease.
Allergic disease, it seems, is with us to stay. Prevention is high on the priority list, and understanding the condition is important for every sufferer. There have been many developments in recent years which contribute positively to the control of allergic disease, and education will continue to be a priority. If you'd like to find out more, write to Also Resource Centre, P.O. Box 88, Observatory 7925.